Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to AYM Syntex Limited conference call to discuss the financial results, earnings, and other business updates of the company for the quarter and year ended on 31st March 2021. On behalf of AYM Syntex Limited, we have with us key senior management, including Mr. Abhishek Mandavewala, MD and CEO, and Mr. Himanshu Dada, CFO. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. Before we begin, I would like to state that some of these statements made in today's discussion may be forward-looking in the nature and may involve risks and uncertainties. I would now like to hand the floor over to Mr. Himanshu Dada for opening comments. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the conference call on our company's behalf. And thanks for attending the call and taking the time out. I wish and hope every one of you are known or safe. Let me begin this conference call with a very short update on the fourth quarter. AYM Syntex posted revenue from operations of Rs 350 crores for the quarter ended 31st March 2021, which was highest quarterly revenue achieved ever in last few years. An increase of 19% over previous quarter and an also increase of 42% over the corresponding quarter last year. The total revenue posted for the year FY21 is Rs 947 crores, which is lower by 81 crores as compared to FY20. The same was primarily on account of loss of sales due to nationwide lockdown initiated during first quarter of this year. However, the cash earned from the operations has been on the higher side as compared to last year. The operations of the company continue to show improvement in Q4 with the increase in demands across all segments and achieved even better than the pre-COVID levels. Increased RM prices have also further aided to increase in the sales value. Utilizations and the plant capacities was seen an improvement in quarter-on-quarter volumes in with increase in utilization and efficiency levels over last year. Margins improved in large part of the business on account of improved product mix and cost optimization initiatives which were undertaken during the year. Rise in raw material prices has also helped the margins in Q4. MORM at 47% has improved as compared to last year 45% and is expected to gradually improve further. In terms of tonnage, we did almost 16,800 tons in Q4, which was, in volumes terms, was highest ever among last all quarters in past few years. Battering our next best performance, which was recorded in Q3, so it was higher than that too. Exports in the March quarter was at 132 crores, as a percentage of revenue was almost at 38%. On a yearly basis, the exports have increased to 42% as compared to 39% last year. Operating EBITDA for the quarter is at 42 crores, which is 12% of NR as compared to 24 crores in last year same quarter, and around 36 crores in Q3 FY21. On a YTD basis, the total EBITDA for the current year for the company is stood at around 94 crores as compared to 93 crores in the year FY20. An improvement in EBITDA in the value terms despite reduction in sales. Exports continues to drive profitability. MORM is made in the made-to-stock business was also aided by rising raw material in the second half of the business. The EBITDA per ton has also seen an improvement with almost 25,000 rupees per ton in Q4 as compared to 19,600 per ton in the same quarter last year and around 22,000 in the last quarter itself. Profit before tax stood at around 23 crores for the quarter ended March 21 as compared to 17 crores in Q3 and 4 crores in Q4 of last year. On YTD basis, profit before tax stood at around almost 17 crores as compared to 10 crores in last year. The net debt figure stands at around 189 crores in March 21 as compared to 232 crores in last year, March 20, and to 207 crores in Q3 of this year. Net debt to EBITDA has also improved and come down to 2 as compared to 2.4 last year. The total gross debtors in the books has reduced to 100 crores as compared to 114 crores in FY20, despite increase in sales in last quarter on account of some favorable payment terms with our customers. Our debtors above 90 days stood at almost 2.6 crores as compared to 4.6 crores in Q4 of last year. Current ratios, excluding the term debt liabilities, has improved to 1.3 in March 21 as compared to 1.21 in March 20. There was some capex incurred of around rupees 20 crores during the year, which was partially on the routine plant improvement operational capex and rest on some debottlenecking capex to service the future demands. Going forward, too, the same capex, some capex in similar lines is expected. With this information note, I am handing over to my colleague, Mr. Abhishek, who will provide you some more business updates on Q4 and full year. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Himanshu. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone and their families are safe at home. Happy to announce that we have hit record profitability this quarter after having the best ever quarter in Q3. In general, I am pleased with the shape the business is starting to take, and I am happy that some of the past initiatives have started to pay dividends. However, at the same time, I would like to caution everyone against extrapolating last quarter's results. There were a few tailwinds that might or will not continue going forward. Nylon prices have been continuously increasing for the last 6 odd months. Since we are always long raw material relative to customer order backlog, this results in an artificial improvement in profitability until prices stabilize. Demand for export and domestic was absolutely on steroids. As we speak, while exports continue to be strong, domestic demand has been completely annihilated. Our domestic utilizations have been down about 60 or 70% since the end of April, and I don't think the situation is changing in the next few weeks. This is now a disruption worse than what we saw during GST and demonetization, and demand will get impacted in this ongoing quarter. Unfortunately, a financial year without such drastic demand disruption continues to remain elusive 5th year in a row. That said, the business is heading in the right direction. Our outsourcing strategy for commodity products is continuing, and we continue to build capability through better MIS and systems to manage this additional activity. Product development and commercialization is on steroids right now, and we form a lion's share of future new product launches at a few of our customers as a result of the launch of several of our patent pending products in the last couple of quarters. We continue to develop and file new patents. Our operational excellence program is also on in full swing. We had the opportunity to benchmark our key plant KPIs against the competition, and I am going to be brutally honest. It is a bittersweet feeling when I say that we are fairly behind. Bitter because our factory should be running far better than the level at which they are running. Sweet because this presents us with a huge opportunity for some low-hanging fruit. The good thing is that we already have a direction and action plan with the help of which we believe we can bridge this gap. As a result of these continuing initiatives, we can, 1, significantly reduce our waste, downgrade and leftover levels, 2, improve the quality consistency of our products, and 3, most importantly, there is a significant scope of production gain that we can achieve by improving speeds, impacting directly on the bottom line without marginal cost or capex. Our throughput improvement initiatives are still on track. We started with a plan when we were running at around 60 to 70 tons per day in spinning. I am glad to say that we have touched as high as 90 tons per day on a few days in March. I feel that we can increase this further with the initiatives that we have in the pipeline. Our cost initiatives are also on track, and we have begun to realize the impact of this on the profitability, particularly of the Palghar plant. We have also begun capex, as Himanshu said, in a calibrated manner. We are mainly looking at shorter payback opportunities across the three businesses. We are strictly looking at investments where the overall margin profile of the business can improve from the current level, and also they need to be strategic in nature. Or if the payback is, if they are neither of the two, then the payback has to be lesser than 1.5 to 2 years. We have several opportunities for CapEx we would have ordinarily done, but are deciding to outsource instead, as it doesn't add capability to our organization, nor does it improve the level of our specialization. The idea is to keep climbing an upward slope of specialization through the CapEx that we incur and outsource the rest. While to sum up the things, while a quarter or two may be impacted, the business is definitely in better shape and form as compared to a year back or 2 years back. And with that, I'd like to open up the floor for your questions.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask any question may please press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may please press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handset while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. We have a first question from the line of Dhawnil Desai from Turtle Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi Abhishek and team. Hope you guys are safe and congratulations for a very good quarter. Abhishek, 3 questions. First one, you mentioned that there were some tailwinds on the nylon side and the prices kept on going up. But if I look at the gross margin, our gross margins are fairly stable even compared to last quarter. So if you can throw a bit more light on that whether that number was so significant or it's more of a smallish number in that sense.
So I guess there must have been a little bit of a give and take. So while on nylon we have a tailwind, we have a little bit of a headwind on polyester, but certainly there were some net benefits which have accrued to us as a result of this nylon price increase. Perhaps the reason for one of the reasons for the gross margin to remain the same, we might have, because of the throughput initiatives, we might have had slightly extra production of the regular commodity products, and that also might have led to let's say the gross margin remaining the same.
Okay, got it. The second question is, if you can give some updates on the Palghar, how the initiatives on increasing the capacity utilization in terms of the new products being marketed is taking place, and how do you look at FY22 from Palghar perspective?
Okay. So, we've been struggling with Palghar for the last few years, 3-4 years. And in the last couple of quarters, I have mentioned that I think the business is starting to see a turnaround. So both in terms of the cost and the second in terms of the, on the sales front. So, I think on both the angles, I think, we will do, even as a business, I think we will do significantly better in 2021-22 as compared to, let's say, I will not compare with 2021 because that's an abnormal year, but let's say as compared to 19-20. So definitely we should, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, do better than what we had done in 19-20. So on the cost side, a lot of the things have already happened, but a lot of the things are yet to happen. So there is still, few initiatives that have still not fructified, and those impacts are yet to be seen on the numbers. And on the sales front also, I think there is some positivity, and we've added a few new salespeople. Inquiries have started to come in at a slightly better rate as compared to before. The new products that we had launched, again, because of the lockdown now, it slowed down a little bit in the last couple of quarters, but some of the teething issues that we had faced until as late as the last quarter, this quarter we seem to have, after almost 2.5 years, we seem to have come out of some of those issues, and we have a slightly better sense of the quality and what needs to be done going forward. So while the sales are not significant in these couple of new products that I had spoken about last time, Ecos and Silkenza, but I am hopeful that they will start picking up. Just like all the other products that we have launched, it's a 2, 3, 4 year cycle sometimes. So even with Comfeel, the same thing had happened, when we launched 1, 2 years, there was only sampling, no commercialization. And then suddenly when the program started to come, it became, it started coming quite rapidly. So I'm hoping that the same thing happens with Ecos and Silkenza and Palgar also. But all in all, I think I'm happy with the direction in which we are headed in Palgar.
And the last question is, so I think, this quarter we clocked around 350 crore run rate. Now, we were in that 250 to 280 crore range, and we were always mentioning that we have some room to increase capacity by 15-20%. So, in terms of capacity, how do you look at it? Is 1,500 crore sales possible without any major capex? And if any capex is required, will it be like a very significant one or a minor one, like 20-25 crore number? If you can give some sense on that.
Okay, so I'm going to divide that question into 2 parts. One is the throughput and the other one is the capex. So on the first part, the throughput bit, I think, as I said, we have done some benchmarking in the last, few months, and we have found that I think there is a room for us to improve our, on all parameters, including the speeds at which we are running our facility. And I think this is something that is not dependent on the outside world, it is in our hands. So I feel that is number one. And number two, there are still some old throughput improvement initiatives that are still not fructified, which are in the process of, let's say, getting fructified, which should hopefully help us to improve our throughput. So as a combination of speed as well as the throughput improvement initiatives, I think we still have a fairly long way to go before we exhaust ourselves on improving the level of output that we are currently getting from the factory. On the capex bit, as I said in my opening remarks, we have 2 ways to look at it. One is that if you have a really lucrative opportunity, it might not be strategic, but it's extremely lucrative. The payback could be, let's say, a year and a half, something like that. In that case, we'll definitely consider it. There might be some cost saving initiative, where you can get paid back very quickly, or some debottlenecking where, the investment will probably be equal to the amount of WIP that you will reduce as a result of making that investment. So, these kind of investments, which are very short payback. So that is one. And the other aspect is the strategic part. So we don't want to invest anything, where we are, let's say, not improving, let's say, the overall level of the company. And when I say level, I mean, let's say, the level of the margins, or the level of the specialization, or the level of, let's say, how unique I am in making that product as compared to, how intense the competitive field is, what strengths do I have in that space. So, unless we are really moving up in some way or the other, we are not going to do that capital investment. So in other way, as I've been saying in the last 2 or 3 years, so it needs to, instead of being more of the same, it needs to add something to our organization, and that's when we will consider the capex, and that's when it will add to the bottom line. So definitely, as compared to before, our hurdle rate for making the investments is higher than what it was before. So to that extent, hopefully the capital intensity should come down.
Okay. I have more questions, but I'll come back in with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone who wishes to ask any question may please press star and 1. We have the next question from the line of Ayush Mittal from Mittal Analytics. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, team AYM. Congratulations on a good performance.
Thank you.
I wanted to understand 2-3 things. First, if I look at the other companies who are somewhat related to what AYM is doing, or even generally the textile sector companies, we are seeing that there has been a substantial increase in margins on a quarter-on-quarter basis, as there has been a favorable RM increase and maybe inventory gains for most of the companies. While in our case, despite a growth in revenue, we are seeing the operating margins around at 12%, which were just same in Q3 what we did. So can you help us share when you say that there have been maybe some inventory gains or something? So how have we improved ourselves on the core business?
Very, very good question. So let me answer that. So, if we look at some of the other listed players who have announced their results, most of those players are, let's say they focus more on the volume products, mainly commodity products, where, let's say they are, they are high volume commodity products, which, there is no, let's say, strategic relationship between the buyer and the seller in general. And, it's very price driven and, very, very commoditized, let's say, in nature. So, what happened in that case is most of the margins have come as a result of improvement of the delta. So let's say the delta between the melt cost and the delta between their finished good. So let's say the delta between the raw material and the finished good, in most of those commodity players, that delta has expanded. And as a result of that expansion, the margins have come substantially higher as compared to before. So for example, we buy a lot of POI, polyester POI, for our Palghar plant. Now, if you look at pre-pandemic, the margin between the, let's say, the melt cost and the finished POI used to be, let's say, between 6 and 8 rupees a kilo, which has gone to almost 20, 21, 22 rupees a kilo in the month of March, which is now down to, let's say, 4 or 5 rupees a kilo as we speak currently. So I believe, and it is arguable, but I believe that 20, 22 rupees, that's not a sustainable price at which people are going to continue to sell POI. Okay, you might have 6 months, you might have a year, you might even have 2 years in a good scenario where, you can earn those kind of margins. But ultimately, it's a commodity, and it's a, let's say, a balance between the supply and demand. And as the supply picks up, and it inevitably will, with this kind of margins, definitely people are going to add capacity expansions, and we're already hearing about the same. Those margins will start coming down. In our case, that proportion of the business is extremely small. So the only part where we get that kind of benefit is the nylon part. So that over the last 4 or 5 years has become a smaller and smaller part of our company, not only in the top line, but also in the bottom line. So only in that part we were able to get that delta that other people got across their entire product mix. Our whatever profitability improvement we have seen is a result of, let's say, the operating leverage, which has straight away, to whatever extent it has flown down to the bottom line. So there is very limited impact of price in our profitability. Most of what we are selling, or a large part of what we are selling, we have fixed contracts with the customers where, let's say, there is a delta between the raw material and the finished good price. And, whether there is a teji or mandi, let's say the delta remains mostly similar. And, these are, let's say, these are customers with whom we've been working for many years, and that, there are fixed, they are more strategic in nature, and they are a fixed business kind of thing. It's not the kind of business where, let's say for a cent or two, they will look outside at a different supplier. So there you have a long-term kind of agreement, and you're not able to take advantage of these short-term demand supply gaps that come up, which you're able to do in nylon, and neither do you want to. You don't want to be in that position. And we have to also remember that there are a lot of impacts on costs that we've had in the last quarter on the negative side also, like freight and packing material, where all the prices have gone up, and we have tried to pass on as much as we could, but we are not always able to pass on 100% except the raw material. So I think maybe that answers your question of why some of the other commodity players have had wonderful margins and our margins are the same.
So given what we are doing and barring a quarter or two, the kind of improvements that we have seen now, these should be sustainable for us for the longer term perspective?
So as I said, there are a couple of factors. One is against and one is, one's a headwind, one's a tailwind. So the headwind is that the nylon margins, definitely they will come down. So we are taking the advantage of raw materials where we have a 3-month booking time, and we are selling the material in immediate basis in the local market. So we have 3 months of inventory, and as the price goes up, you are booking the material and consuming the material which is 3 months old and at a much lower price, and you are selling the material today at today's price. So that's the gain that you're incurring in nylon, which you will not have going forward. Let's say, assuming that the product price becomes stable. On the other side, you have got all these 5 or 6 levers that I mentioned to you in my opening remarks, which we believe hopefully should to a certain extent offset. Now, which one will be higher and how long those 5 or 6 levers will take to play out, it's anybody's guess, but it's a balance between the two.
Okay. Second, we are seeing that most of the textile companies, especially who are dealing with export customers, and that is what you also said, that you are seeing very good demand, while the domestic things are pretty negative, understandably, given the situation in India. Are you able to convert your domestic capacity to export or do something to limit this impact? And also, many of these companies are giving very robust outlook from the foreign customers where they want to have more. Are we doing something? Are we seeing something like that and trying to do more on the export front?
Yeah, but unfortunately, it doesn't happen with a flip of a switch. So these are long relationships. Again, we are not in commodity business, and you can't just start a customer at the flip of a switch by reducing 5 rupees or 2 rupees. So it's a long duration time. I think when we started this journey in 2016-17, we were at about 18-20% of exports. Today, I think we are between 45 and 55% exports quarter to quarter. So I think we made a good journey, and it will only increase hopefully going forward. But it's not a button that you can just turn on or off, and some of the commodity players can. So other players in the industry, they can just literally decide that okay, domestic market is not there, so let's sell more in Turkey, or let's sell more in South America, or let's sell more in Europe. We can reduce the prices and we can get more volumes. We can't do that.
Okay. Third question is, if we look at the cash flow statement, we say that the company is generating robust operational cash flows. How do you plan to deploy them going forward now that the balance sheet is in a bit better shape?
As I said, we have adequate opportunities for investment. We need to make sure that we don't get carried away. And as I said, the goal is to keep climbing like a pyramid towards the top, where we specialize more and more. So today, what I am making as part of my product mix, what I call a commodity, some other player might call a specialty. And maybe they are more efficient than me in making that product, and I can easily outsource that product, and he'll probably make that same product cheaper than what I can make in my own factory. So, we don't want to make those kind of products which, we can easily make outside. And at the same time, we have plenty of opportunities for capital investment, and even right now we are sitting on a lot of opportunities. We are trying to calibrate. We don't want to go overboard and burden the balance sheet. We want to make sure that we take it easy and make sure that we only invest in areas where the payback periods are also lesser and they are strategic in nature. And the other aspect is, of course, debt. So we have a fairly, almost 190 crore of debt on the balance sheet, and there is always opportunity to reduce that also. But so these I would say that this is the plan to use the capital going forward.
What I meant, any numbers in your mind, like 50% will go towards debt repayment or 50% will go towards growth investing or something like that?
No, I think it's very dynamic in nature, and
okay. Got it.
Depending on how quickly products mature, stabilize, start, that plan will be decided.
Got it. Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A reminder to the participant, to ask a question, you may. We have the next question from the line of Agastya Dave from CAO Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for the presentation. It was very well detailed. Congratulations on excellent performance as well. Sir, just a few clarifications on the statements that you have made so far. One, I missed the line where you were talking about throughput going to 90 tons per day for a few days in March, sir. So what was it in reference to?
So that was the spinning throughput. I was just giving an example of how we have been able to, through our throughput improvement initiatives in 2019, 20, and 21, we have been able to take up the production without incurring any capex.
Got it, sir. Sir, on the spreads, from 25 rupees a kg, how much have they corrected to? I understand it's a temporary phase, given that domestic demand is particularly weak, but to what extent have they corrected?
Very hard to say. So in our case, I think it's less an impact of contribution. More, it is more an impact of not being able to sell enough to, let's say, the absorption of fixed cost is lesser because our gross margins are higher than our competitors.
So, sir, can I conclude that the gross margins are still holding up? It's just a question of operating deleverage.
Correct. Generally, that's the case in our. Generally that's what happens in our case.
Right. Sir, how are the channel inventories now, given this sudden drastic decline in demand? Are there plenty of inventories, or inventories inventory restocking will again happen post reopening?
No, certainly. So, whenever you have a period where 1.5 months you don't sell anything, certainly somewhere, there is a pent-up demand which hopefully should, come back strongly. So we've seen that, during demonetization, during GST, during the sharp volatility that we saw in oil price in 18, again, the first wave of COVID, and hopefully now even in the second wave of COVID, we should hopefully see the same thing. That, if you have 1.5 months, your plant is shut, definitely there is a pent-up demand which comes back strongly, and we are hoping that it will come back in our case also. When it comes is anybody's guess, but we are hoping that it will come back. Is my voice audible? I'm not able to hear.
Yeah, Agastya, we are not able to hear you. Hello?
Perhaps we can go to the next question.
Sure. We have a next question from the line of Jatin K from Alpha Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Jatin.
Yes,
Good.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for taking my questions and congrats for a good set of numbers. So, sir, my first question would be, you're talking that we are not into commodities, we are into, as in we have long-term contracts, and that is why our QOQ margin hasn't gone up. So, in case things fall, prices fall, do we expect current margins to hold up?
Yeah, in the last 5-7 years, on the gross margins, there is not as much volatility in AYM as compared to other players. Certainly, it's not that 100% of our product mix is specialized. We have a percentage of our products, for example, nylon, where we are subject to the same volatility and movement in market supply demand as compared to the rest of the players. But in general, definitely, I feel that the gross margin volatility of our business will be far lesser than the other players.
Sure. And any guidance you would like to give for the coming year on sales, margins, etc.?
No. We don't, as you know, we don't provide any forward-looking guidance.
Sure. For now, that's it from my side. Thank you and all this.
Thank you very much. Anyone who wishes to ask any question, may please press star and 1. We have a next question from the line of Ankit from Bamboo Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and congratulations on good set of numbers. Talking about the new product development and the production pipeline, you had mentioned that that is working out quite well and it sounds good also. So can you tell us what are our plans of launching new products over the next year or two? And do you see the scale-up timeline of this new products reducing from existing 3-4 years for our the products which were launched 3-4 years back, and let's say they have now reached the critical stage? Is it possible that the timeline of the new product commercialization and scale up reduces significantly from 3-4 years for this new product that we plan to launch?
Yeah, definitely there is a lead time which is involved in these activities. We in 2016 when we started, we had launched few products. Now, if you see the volume of those products slowly, steadily, they are scaling up. Whether it is industrial yarn, whether it is Wonderfeel, Comfeel, solution dyed nylon. Lot of these products which we had, negligible volumes when we had started in 16. Today, they are starting to form a fairly good part of our. Well, it's still not like a majority part or anything, but it's starting to form a significant minority, let's say, in the overall product mix. And same way, I think it will happen with the other products also. Slowly, steadily, they will, as they get launched, customers start taking it up, and they put it in one of their programs, and then suddenly we'll see a spike up. So it's a time-consuming process. What I do know, and one way that I can put it is, at this point, I feel that there are far higher number of products as well as number of programs under development using our new products with our customers than at any time in the past as compared to before. So certainly that is a positive side. So I can't quantify that by when these products will get commercialized, but all I can say is that they are already starting to form some small share of our business, and hopefully going forward it will improve.
Sure. And we have not been sharing the percentage contribution of from commodity products and specialized products. Do you plan to share this going forward, or if you remain like that, will not be sharing those numbers?
At the right time, I'll be happy to share. Right now, at this point in time, this is all the information that I can share.
Sure. And on the operating margin front, Abhishek, this has been, in terms of sales, this has been the best of quarters, and we did have some advantage on the nylon front. And despite that, the operating margins have remained around 12%, and we have done all the efforts on scaling up the specialized products, and our gross margins have also been pretty steady around 47-45% over the past few quarters. So, when over the next 3-4 years, when the percentage contribution of specialized products in our overall top line further increases, do you see a margin improving with some operating leverage kicking in, or that is not possible in our business?
No, certainly there is nothing which is not possible. Certainly, as you get more output from the same factory without, let's say, capital expenditure, you're using the same utility cost, you're using the same manpower, you're using the same overheads, but you're able to produce more. One is that, and then, the capex that you do it in areas where the overall, let's say the margin is higher than the average margin of the company. So certainly the margins over a period of time can definitely go up. But, it's not it's not like a business of Unilever or something like that every quarter, till the third decimal point of margin, the margins are constant. So it has its own up and downs, but if you look at the long-term trajectory, starting from 2018, we were down to 6%, 6.5%. So from 6, we have gone 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe you'll have a quarter or two, it will go up and down again. But the long-term trajectory, if you see, it's in the positive direction.
Sure. That was real. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to add in terms of numbers also, if you will see, quarter on quarter, you might not see those movements going on. But if you will see year on year, from last 3-4 years, it has moved from 41-43% to around 47% or 48% now. I'm talking about the gross margin. So overall, the direction-wise, I think it is going on an improvement trend only year on year.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A reminder to the participant, to ask a question, you may please press star and 1. We have a next question from the line of Mohit Balakrishnan, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Hi, Abhishek. Hi, Himanshu. Hope everything is fine at your end. So couple of questions, I think both have been asked previously as well, but just wanted more clarity. Just on this point on operating leverage, Abhishek, just wanted to understand, I mean, we've had the best quarter in terms of top line, but our other expenses has also risen in almost a similar kind of regard, proportionately. So just want to understand despite having a very strong top line performance and also gross margin also being in a similar range that we would typically aspire to, what was the reason for, specifically this quarter I'm asking, and also going forward in that sense, why wouldn't operating leverage play out in a quarter like this, which was so strong?
Right. So, I think, so first of all, I do think that operating leverage has played out. So there is a certain element of improvement of profitability that has already happened if you compare with the previous quarters. Number two, we must remember that from the base, let's say if you look at pre-COVID, the average nylon raw material prices were somewhere close to $1,600. Today, that same raw material is roughly close to $2,400. So while the delta in rupees remains the same, but the top line has increased more than what would it otherwise have increased had the raw material prices remained the same. So in effect, what we need to look at is more the volumes as opposed to the sale price, because the sale price is impacted by a very volatile oil-based raw material price that fluctuates from quarter to quarter, and it's not entirely accurate to look at, let's say, the margins on let's say an increased level of raw material and compare it with the margins of, let's say, the pre-COVID era where the price was almost 60% lower. So generally in our industry, the prices fluctuate up and down. So in my 5 years, 6 years, I have seen that the prices of nylon has gone from, let's say, 1,600 on the lower side to 24, 25, 2,600 on the higher side. And, generally at 25, 2,600, everybody in the value chain is making money. So, the benzene players, the caprolactam players, the chip players, everybody is making money. And, let's say $1,600, very few people are making money. So it fluctuates between that level. And right now we are at the other end, and, hopefully the situation will reverse and the prices will reduce. And as a result of that, our turnover will reduce, even though our volume won't. And, to that extent, you'll be able to see a better, in terms of a percentage-wise, you'll be able to see a better EBITDA margin. But if you look at the absolute figure, I certainly feel that we have done better, and some of the operating leverage has played out when the EBITDA has come 42 crores. 44, I think, 43, 44.
Some more to it. So when you are looking at the other expenses, I think, so being the format of Reg 33, how it is, but in that, say, around 85% of the expenses is still linked to the production or sales, so it is variable. So we have to keep that in mind, because there are, say, a lot of expenses like contract labor or packing costs or dyes, chemicals or power and fuel and all that, which are actually linked to sales, and even the freight and forwarding charges and all, and selling and distribution expenses like commission and all, which are all directly linked to sales, actually will increase as the sales and all will increase. So the percentage, the other expenses percentage which you see, 85% of that is actually directly linked to sales. And in this quarter, actually, since the freight and forwarding expenses and the packing costs and all have gone dramatically high, so to that extent, the other lever. So that's the reason we are seeing that the overall expenses, other expenses, a percentage of revenue remains the same.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Just to add, ours is not a business that you can look on a quarter-to-quarter basis. So, if you try to make sense of one quarter's results, there are a lot of variables, and I think it's not the right way to look at least AY and Sintex. And I think what needs to be looked at is what is the trajectory we have made over, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And, that is the important thing that we need to, we need to look at. And from that angle, I'm extremely happy with the progress that we made. And more importantly, we are so much ahead of us. That's all I'll say to that.
Sure. No, I think that's a point well taken. My only point was that, but you explained it well. I understand it. Second question was, in terms of, you mentioned, in terms of some of these things, some tailwinds which were there in this quarter may not sort of sustain. So can you just expound on that as well a bit more? And just on the last point that you also made. So I think our EBITDA per ton is the highest that I have seen. That numbers that I have at least for the last 12, 13 quarters that I have in front of me. So the current EBITDA per ton that we have, directionally, that you think is sustainable in terms of, I'm not asking the margins per se, but I'm just trying to understand the quality of the EBITDA in terms of what we have achieved over the last, as you mentioned, over the last 3-4 years of hard work that we've gone through. This kind of EBITDA last quarter was, I think, 22,000. This quarter was 25,000, I think what Himanshu said. So just want to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, taking one quarter's EBITDA and, there are so many factors behind which this 25,000 figure has come. Headwinds, tailwinds,
right.
All this Ind AS accounting, which, there are some sales that get recognized, there are some sales that don't get recognized. You got fluctuating raw material prices, you got a dynamic market environment. So, to take that one figure and try to say whether, EBITDA will be higher or lower, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. So as I said earlier, what is important to see is that where were we, let's say 3 years back, maybe at 6-7%, where we are today. And, there are several steps that have gone into going from where we were 3 years back to today. And whether we have enough opportunities to continue to do the same, yes. But you might have a situation where, you might have a next 4 quarters which are much lower than 12%. I don't know. I'm not saying it will be. I'm not saying it won't be. But it's taking one quarter's results, I don't think is representative. But definitely I will say on a longer term basis, there are enough levers for us to continue an upwards trajectory, whether that is through our capex, whether that is through our improvement products, whether that is through our improvement of cost structure, whether that is through our throughput improvement initiatives. So there are enough levers that we can use in order to improve the margin. Now, whether that 12%, how sustainable it is, whether that 12 will become 13 or it will become 10, that only time will tell.
Understood. No, I think you answered my question. Thank you very much. All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone who wishes to ask any question may please press star and 1. We have a next question from the line of Dhawnil Desai from Turtle Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, Abhishek. Can you give some update on the BCF side and whether on the tricolor side, any development, new customers, what is happening?
Sorry, Dhawnil, your line broke up. If you can just repeat that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Can you give some update on the BCF side, especially on the tricolor side, if we have got any new orders, customers, how is that shaping up?
Yeah, so tricolor is just one part of the new product development, and definitely we are utilizing the tricolor line to make tricolor products as much more compared to, let's say, the previous quarter. So this quarter we've done some good business on tricolor, and I feel that we'll continue to do so. We are working on some very interesting products on that tricolor line, very, very unique products, and I am very, very hopeful of getting a good response from the customers on those products. In general, the product development activity is in full flow, and we have a good requirement of sampling or request from some of our customers on these new products, and I am hopeful that in the next year or two, at least some of them should be commercialized and see the light of day.
So, we have enough order inquiries and pipeline to run it at a decent capacity utilization?
So I was talking more about the about the new product commercialization. So in terms of the new product, we have a fair amount of interest, let's say, in the new products that we've developed, and fair amount of projects that are under development. Now, some of those projects get realized, some of those projects don't get realized. The new inquiries and the business development is a slightly different aspect, but there too we have a good healthy pipeline of customers. Again, there is always it's a dynamic scenario, and sometimes the scenario changes very quickly. Everybody knows that people staying at home, they're ordering more of goods as compared to, let's say, going out to restaurants and traveling abroad. So I think the demand for consumer products is more than what it would ordinarily be had the world not been in a pandemic. So I feel that somewhere even that demand will moderate, but I think we have a healthy pipeline of new potential opportunities. I would not say new business, new potential opportunities that we hope to commercialize going forward.
Okay. And another, correct me if I'm wrong, but I sensed the slight change in tone in terms of, on the capex side. Till I think couple of quarters back, our stand was that the first and the first priority for us is to repay the debt. Now I think it looks like that we may have to juggle between the two. So can you throw some more light as to has something changed, or is my assessment inaccurate?
No, it's a good observation, reading between the two lines. But at the same time, see, last year we have incurred only, let's say, around 20 odd crores. The year before that also we had incurred only 20 odd crores. And, we have used the extra free cash flow in order to pay down the debt. That continues to remain our priority. But as and when, let's say, new opportunities come up and, it meets our criteria for payback, it meets our criteria for, level of specialization, the barriers to entry, the strategic importance. If it meets our criteria, definitely we would, we would want to grow the business, but the balance sheet is definitely the first priority. So we don't want to, we don't want to play around with the balance sheet. Let's say we want to make sure that we have a healthy balance sheet, and as the cash flow also improves, which you can see as compared to previous year and this year, certainly we have the ability to invest a slightly more amount in capex as compared to what we were doing before.
Got it. The only reason I'm asking this question is that last time when we did a large capex, it took us 3, 4, 5 years to, come back to normalcy, and balance sheet was stressed. So, in the next phase of growth, we don't end up in the same situation. That's the only hope or expectation. So I hope.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. So last time, I would like to also mention, last time what had happened is when we had incurred the large capex, we were, we had not even begun the journey. Let's say we had just begun the journey of transformation. A large part of our profitability was coming from nylon, and that, literally, it vanished. And, that is the reason why, let's say the numbers were not as good as what they could have been or they should have been. But that was one of the large parts why there was such a swing in profitability. Of course, going into this year, the share of profitability from nylon is significantly lesser, as compared to what it was, in 2016-17 when we embarked on the first string of capex. That doesn't mean that we are going to go out of the way and invest, some capex which is beyond what our company's internal accruals are generating, but we'll definitely calibrate, and even our hurdle rate is much higher than what it was in 16-17. So, there are had we been in 2016-17, there were a lot of potential investments that we would have probably already done. But, because we have matured more as an organization, we are not making those capex because we feel that there'll be better opportunities to deploy that same amount of money with a better return potential as compared to those opportunities. So I think we have evolved as an organization, and hopefully, unless the scenario becomes something like what it was in March 2020, and heavens are going to come to fall, hopefully we will not be in that kind of situation again.
Great. Happy to hear that, Abhishek. Thanks.
Thank you very much. A reminder to the participant to ask a question. You may please press star and one now. We have a next question from the line of Agastya Dubey from CAO Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity again, sir. My call got dropped while I was asking the previous time. So, sir, please forgive me if there is some repetition.
No issue. Please go on. Yeah. No issue.
Sir, on the strategy side, over the last few quarters and in fact years, you have been mentioning that we'll be going up the value chain, and today again you have repeated that. So, can you describe, can you quantify what exactly are you looking for here? I understand the payback part, but in terms of products, specifically, what kind of products you are thinking of developing? And if you can't go into details there, can you describe what would be the impact on spreads you expect to see? And does every increase in spread comes with disproportionate amount of capex requirement?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I don't think I'm in a position to quantify it, what a new product will contribute more than what it is, more than what we are getting. So not possible to do that. Certainly, when we say we want to move up the value chain, in simple terms, if I have to put it in simple terms, let's say I'm making a product today and I'm competing with 10 different companies. The next product that let's say the new product that I want to launch, or let's say the specialization that I want to do, let's say in that case, instead of 10 companies, I'm hoping that I might compete with only one company or two companies, or maybe in some cases more companies. So that is what I mean when I say specialization. So to make the product mix more and more niche as compared to what it is currently. So that is what I mean by specialization. Now, does it require a disproportionate capex? Absolutely not. So whatever products we have made, it's using the same equipment, and we hope all the patents that we have filed has been filed using the same equipment, and we hope to continue to use the same equipment to continue to develop and commercialize these products.
So how long is the development cycle of these new products? Starting from conceptualization of the new products to commercializing, and then also getting the clients to validate your technology and your process and your product, and then finally achieving commercial sales. What's the timeline there?
Yeah. So typically it could be anywhere between 3 and 5 years. So the most complex ideas, can take up to 5 years. So there are some projects that I had taken up in 2016, which are literally just getting commercialized. So it's been almost 5 years since we've been working on that product. There were a lot of things that we had to take care, secrecy, making sure that we take the trials in an area where we know that those trials will, let's say not, get leaked out to competition, and, complicated product mix, some minor changes in equipment which take their own sweet time. So when you think of an idea, by the time it gets converted in a product, it generally takes at least 1 to 2 years. In this case, it took as long as 5 years. And then you've got, at least a year to 2 years, by when you can show it to a customer, the customer shows interest, he calls for, let's say, a sample of a finished product. He sees the finished product, then he says that, okay, send me some yarn. He'll send a bobbin of yarn. He'll try it out on his sample machine. Then he'll say, okay, I like it. Please send me a creel load. You'll send a creel. He'll run it on his bulk machine. He'll like it. He'll take it up with his customer. Maybe 50% of the time, the customer will say, okay, it's a great product. 50% of the time, his customer will say, no, it has no value. So in that case, the product gets dropped. The time where it works, let's say after that, he'll say, okay, I want to do a bulk commercial trial. Maybe he'll call for 4 or 5 creels. But then after that, he'll probably convert it into a program. So that exercise also could be anywhere, not 1 to 2 years. I would say it could be anywhere between 1 to even 3 years. And in the meanwhile, sometimes a person in the company will change. He will decide, okay, nahi, mere ko ye abhi nahi karna hai, mera priority kuch aur hai. So, those kind of situations also can happen. So it's a very uncertain, long-winded, difficult process. In general, I have noticed in my experience, when you're able to bring the cost down for a customer, so let's say if you're offering a product at X rupees and you've developed a new product where by consuming your product, he's able to bring his cost down, those get commercialized faster. Where you're trying to seek a premium, there it takes a little bit longer to get commercialized. So where you're, let's say, offering a property, an extra property, or you're offering something that other products are not offering, and you're expecting him to pay a little bit more as compared to the product that is existing in the market, there it takes a little longer time to convince and commercialize the product as compared to the others.
So, sir, are you targeting polymer properties through physical processes, or are you targeting polymer at chemical level? Are you going for different kind of polymers, or are you just giving it better physical properties through some additive or some slightly different process?
So I think polymer is not our business. We buy polymer. So we are not doing anything with the polymer. We are using the same polymer and we are making products which are otherwise not available. Let's say through, as you said, the change of parameters of physical properties in some way or the other.
So you're not actually tying up with the polymer guys and developing new polymers. It's just completely at your end.
Yeah. So of course we have in the last 3 or 4 years we have launched products where we have developed new polymers. Sorona is an example. While we don't have any significant volumes, that is definitely an example where we've taken a new polymer which nobody in India was using, and put it into a new product that has not been seen before, or let's say it's not been seen before by an Indian company. It's been seen before otherwise. And so we have also used different polymers to make new products, but we don't play with the polymer. So we don't tell our supplier that, okay, you put this in the polymer and you put that in the polymer and you make this different type of polymer. So we are just buying what we already have.
Okay. Got it. So that's very, very, very helpful, sir. And so finally, you mentioned that incrementally you are looking at opportunities where the payback is 1 to 1.5 years. So that seems like really attractive, right? And really high level of benchmarking that you're doing. So is it possible cost saving measures can have that, but those will be like on the margin rather than large? That would be my guess. But on this new value addition target that you have, or the outsourcing that you are doing, do any of those opportunities meet this 1.5 year payback period benchmarks?
No, definitely not. No. So I think I don't think we are in a business where we can consistently incur capex with 1.5 year paybacks. If that was the case, our return on equity would be much better than what it is. This was said in the context of non-strategic investments.
Right.
So if they are investments which are non-strategic in nature, then they must have this kind of hurdle rate in order for us to make that capital investment. So that was the context in which I said. So I don't think it is possible to have that kind of hurdle rate.
Right. So sir, right now, just one last question. Can you then indicate what kind of hurdle rates you are looking at when you're talking about newer products? And similarly, when you take an outsourcing decision, what kind of hurdle rate is that? Is it completely on the value addition side? There must be some hurdle, right? Obviously, but on the outsourcing side, is it that no value addition hai, fir se outsource kar do because I want to have a good relationship with my customer? Is that the decision, or there is some economic decision involved there?
No, if somebody can make a product which I am making today and he can make it cheaper than me, then I think it makes sense for me to buy that product from outside rather than make that product in my factory. I think that is the main criteria in doing outsourcing and increasing outsourcing.
And so for new products, what's your hurdle rate generally? Ballpark, sir, I understand.
We don't make any investments just for a new product. So most of our new products are developed on our existing line. So I don't think the concept of a hurdle rate would be relevant in that sense.
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much for answering my question. So thank you very much. Sir, I would really appreciate if you can post the transcript of the call. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Thank you.